Before we get into this week's episode, I have a very special announcement I'd like to share with you all. As my valued listeners, I wanted you to be the first to know about the inaugural Women and Wealth Catalyst Summit that I'll be hosting in 2025. I hope you'll join me and some other amazing women on March 27th at the Golden Gate Club in San Francisco for a full day of impactful sessions, including fireside conversations, intimate panels, and engaging discussions with values-aligned partners. Do not miss this opportunity to ignite your path to financial success and become part of a supportive network committed to achieving wealth. Reserve your spot today at women.win. That's right, ladies, women.win. And join us for a day that will shape your financial future. If you can't join us in San Francisco, be sure to stay tuned for New York City dates and venues soon to be announced. I can't wait to see you all there.
Welcome to Getting Rich Together, the show for successful women who are looking to take their financial futures to the next level. I'm your host, Shama Bunton. When I started my wealth building journey, nobody knocked on my door to give me all the answers. So I want to talk to the experts who've done it and bring the answers to you so we can discover the right opportunities that will help us achieve the financial futures we've always dreamed of together and have fun doing it. So let's dive into this episode and start getting rich together. I am here with the incredible Barbara Pierce. Barbara, you are a formidable woman who is known really around evangelizing women, wealth, and more importantly, how women exercise their wealth through their values and in ways that feel organic and natural, and dare I say, powerful. You know, when I think of you and the organizations and the things that you spend your time with, it's certainly around creating momentum. So Barbara, thank you so much for being here today on Getting Rich Together. I am so excited to dive into your story.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So Barbara, let's start from the beginning. Certainly, you are known today as driving change through capital. But I'm wondering, was Barbara at 5 years old, 6 years old, thinking so much about changing the world? Or was she thinking about something else? What was life like for you? What were your money stories? Let's start early.
So, yeah, at 5 or 6, I was selling. I always loved to sell pretty much anything in my room or that I picked up on this to continue to do that for quite a while. But part of it was that I grew up working class, that my dad was a union worker. My mom was a retired hairdresser, and that money was always an issue. But it was always talked about. You know, that your goal, your mission in terms of having women talk about money, I think that especially when you're working class, it comes up. It affects most decisions. Are we going to eat out? Probably not. Are we going to go on vacation? Unlikely. My dad used to go on strike. And so that was a very stressful time. And how much was my dad going to work? You know, overtime was a big thing. So it influenced a lot. It was talked about, not in generally uplifting ways. There was a lot of talk about poorhouse. And when I was 5 or 6, I was like, is that an actual location? Are there multiple poorhouses? So, you know, hearing that, a lot of belt tightening made me very aware of money.
Yeah. So when you were so young and you're thinking about selling, was it for the sheer joy of, you know, I made this bracelet and I'm going to sell it and make some money? Or was there any sort of driving mechanism behind that? Was it spirited and fun, or was it, I'm going to go out there and make some money so I can buy some things?
It actually wasn't about buying. I like to have it. I like to hold on to it. I like to put it in my bank. I think early on, I just saw it's powerful. It gives you autonomy. Even at that, I mean, I guess I had my own dollar to spend at the fair. But I was never so interested or fixated on what I could buy with it. But I did like making it. I liked the act of selling it. So that's what I enjoyed about it.
And did you have a little piggy bank that you used, or where would you count your dollars and your coin?
Oh, I remember exactly what it looked like. I remember watching over it very carefully. And yes, I cherished that. And I was really proud. And that's why I held on to it. And I like to see it accumulate.
That's interesting. And as you were watching your parents at such a young age, and here you are sort of starting to realize that money earned, right, should be money kept. And, I imagine that led to some very thoughtful purchases, over time. Do you remember any of the first things that maybe you had decided to spend your?
Well, I was fortunate enough that my parents supported me in figure skating.
Wow.
I was obsessed with it. And that was outside of our budget, but I really loved it. And so anything to do with skating in terms of what I wore or things, magazines, mementos that I was very invested in. Like I said, I did like to hold on to it more than.
Yeah. And were there dreams then about, becoming a big figure skater, or what were the aspirations when you were that young?
Well, that is the dream. I'm also very practical, and it became clear I was fine. I was competitive. I would leave school during the day to practice for competitions. So I was serious enough, but I was not going to be one of the handful of people that were going to win championships. And I even saw then, even if you were a champion, that you would not be earning that much money. And that was security, and being able to earn money was a real aspiration of mine and a concern, even at an early age. So.
Wow. And so as you started to move through high school and then move on to university, were there any particular jobs that you took on during that time period? Anything that was uniquely motivated by your pursuit to earn the money and keep the money?
In my hometown, in my small hometown, the paper that I got attention from the editor because I made the National Honor Society speech, and he published it in the paper.
Wow.
And yes. And I was like, look, if you're really smart, like, what's the use of just inventing like a better dishwasher? Not that there's anything wrong with doing that. The crux of my speech was like, you have these gifts, like, just imagine all that you can do and be inspired by that. And so he published it, and he hired me as a high school senior. And I eventually took on the summer tourist publication. I had a staff member who was double my age, and we would lay it out, and it was features, and the amount of trust they placed in me was incredible. And then during college, I had all sorts of jobs because I was very driven, because I was the first to go to college, and it cost a lot. I was very aware of, and I wanted an education, but I really wanted a vocation. I wanted to earn money. I saw that as essential in terms of self-determination and having more choices. And so I did a lot of internships that supported what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a journalist first, and then I earned $14,000 my first year. And it didn't look like it was going to get that much better.
Wow. And so what sort of started to inform that, or what informed your choices of university majors? How did you start to decide this is where I'm going to focus my time and energy? Was it as calculated? So far, Barbara, you sound very specific. It's like, all right, how do I game this system? How do I achieve this thing? I'm going to attack it from these different directions. So was your university education approach in a very similar manner, or how did you go about choosing what you're going to study?
Well, this is a switch that I went to Wellesley, it's a women's college, and I went in terms of seeing women who had gone there who were very successful. I really admired. They were making a difference. They were real leaders. But I also went there because I didn't have a network. My parents were the only ones to graduate, among their generation from high school, that I saw the power of the people that the people that support you, the people that get you jobs. And I knew that Wellesley was very well known for that. And that has proven to be true a million times over. Huge influence in terms of Wellesley women helping me. So that was the practical part of it. My major was not. I became very enamored with a Chilean human rights activist and poet who was my professor. And I also got very interested in dictatorships. How can these things happen in the world? How can democracies change? What makes people do what they do? And so I studied with her. I had an individual major, and I focused on 20th century Hispanic history and literature. Yes.
Fabulous.
So I tried to explain to my father about liberal arts and the value of it. He was supporting me because he loved me. I said, it's to really clearly express your ideas and communicate. He said, well, would have been a lot cheaper and maybe more effective if you had taken a handwriting class because I was like, So no, not practical. He's like, what are you going to do with that? But they were very supportive. And I did go on to get a master's in Latin American studies and got a fantastic fellowship. Well, it was because of that professor.
So as you were then, thinking about life and what it would look like after university, it sounds like you went into it with this really clear understanding. And I love what you said here about the power of networks. That to me feels like something that you've really taken with you throughout your life and something that is meaningful and also very, very impactful. But you also walked out with an interesting focus in education. And so as you were starting to navigate and look at life afterwards and starting to build, right? Here we have this very strategic woman who's now developing these powerful relationships and is armed with a great deal of curiosity and ideas of the world and wanting to go out there and build something. What were some of those early jobs like? What was it like for you just getting started? And were you at that time, as you were out there building, was the mentality around money still, I'm going to work and I'm going to save? And if so, right, what were you saving for?
The first two jobs I had really did not make me any money. And so in terms of being a journalist, I worked at a daily paper, which was quite a coup right out of school. But it was in a place where they said it was like New York without the glitz, but with all the problems that I could report on. $14,000. I'm like, I really don't want to live like this. But I went to graduate school and I had a stipend, which was amazing, but it was not much. It was in Austin, Texas, back when it was weird and not very expensive. So that was okay. But back to the practical part, when I was working towards my PhD in Latin American history, Cold War ended, people were not interested, and I did not want to work and fight for tenure in East Texas for $19,000 a year. So I used my Wellesley connection and really networked. I wanted to move out to San Francisco, and I interviewed with public relations, publishing, and then also fundraising at a university. Someone took a chance on me. I started focusing on special gifts, fundraising with individuals, really relational. I loved it. And also in bad economic times and good economic times, fundraising is always in demand. And I really liked that.
What's really fascinating is to realize, Barbara, that you've now been in the space of giving and philanthropy for decades.
Yes.
I mean, this is a huge unlock, especially as I realize that you're kind of growing up in this world. So here you are as a young woman who's now starting to be involved in seeing how personal finance and economic dynamics start to shift these large sums of capital moving. And you as a young woman are also growing up and starting to understand what money means to you.
Mm-hmm.
So what did money mean to you then? And how did your perspective and things change?
What money meant to me was really about having choices. That was huge. My mother didn't feel she had as many choices. That's what she wanted for me. And so that's really continues to influence me to this day. And that I feel so lucky really every day that I have a lot of choices about how to spend my time, who I spend my time with, what type of choices I make in terms of spending, in terms of giving. It's fantastic to be on the other side of it too. I mean, it's really a dream, but I was very influenced by the amazing philanthropists that I worked with. And that was part of, really taking in on a very deep level because I got to know them quite well. I saw them at their best. No one has to give money, no matter how much money they have. So they were making a choice and really about what they wanted their legacy to be and who they wanted to help, that they had more than enough and how they wanted to make a difference. And that was an honor.
And what was it like when your mentors that were training you and working with you said, all right, Barbara, now it's time for you to go ask. And they sent you in with the big dogs and you had to start asking for big money. What did that feel like? How old were you when you started making these big asks and what were what worked?
Right. I know I was young enough. I was 24 to maybe not be as anxious as I could be, or maybe should have been. But in terms of going out and making big asks, I had a great mentor and really focused on they want to do this. I do not put a gun at their head and I'm offering an opportunity. If you want to give money, you need a match in terms of where it will make the biggest difference. Getting those dollar amounts out because I had never had them was a bit abstract. It's not a science. You don't really know how much to give necessarily, but I really made it as a conversation, which people appreciated. I'm like, I can't know how much you have to give. I would love for you to consider $100,000. And I want to know whether that would be a match, something that you would want to do. So I think just approach it matter of factly, not put my money issues onto them. And most of the times they really appreciate it. Sometimes it was way outside of what they actually could give. Most people either humored me or were flattered.
Well, I love that. You know, I think that there's something also really fascinating about being a young person whom I'm sure you weren't making that much money. And here you are asking for lots of money. And, you know, it's one of those interesting moments where it's like, wow, like what if I just got 10% off the top guys? Like, come on, I'm making all these big asks.
Yes. My mother brought that up often. And I had to explain to her, first of all, that would really affect what that was like and how people would respond. But most of all, I would be eating tuna a lot because the gifts I was working on, 6, 7, 8-figure gifts, take a long time to come to fruition. So, yeah.
I love that. I think it's so funny. So walk me through, you know, your career is so fascinating, Barbara. And obviously money is so interwoven into your personal journey. And there are all these incredible inflection points. With the early money that you were starting to make, was it all going to savings? Had you started, you know, putting money into 401ks, starting investing in the stock market? How did your sort of financial literacy grow up with you as you were growing up?
With the initial money that I was making, I put a lot towards student loans. That at Wellesley, I got a lot of financial aid, but as you probably know, a lot of that was also in the form of loans. And so I had a lot of loans to pay off, but I was aware when I was offered my first retirement account, again, I had a great mentor, Patrick Woods, who took a chance on me and explained, like, you need to take advantage of this, even though it will hurt some. And I'm so grateful this day because when I saw that chart, which everybody should see, or t-shirts made about starting early and what a difference that will make, that was a huge light bulb moment. And so I did invest in retirement, but I did not have any taxable money at that point that I could invest.
It's wonderful to think to see like when light bulbs go off and when we have to, you know, when we make decisions. So as your career was progressing, talk to me about some of the next big moments for you financially. Was it big decisions that you made in certain jobs? Was it, you know, around family? You know, when did you start to think in bigger stakes? When did things start to become also more fun? You know, I often find that when we have more capital to play with, we can invest in the people and ideas and businesses that mean the most to us. And so track to me sort of the evolution of increasing decision-making power and what that felt like and what those moments were.
In terms of as I progressed in my career, I started working on bigger and bigger gifts. And that a lot of those people I would get to know over the course of a year. And I would ask them a lot of questions because they saw that I was curious and open and non-judgmental. I just think, wow, that is amazing. You have this money. What do you like? It's a whole different culture. And what does that look like? And so I learned a lot from that. So I was working on big money. I was not earning big money because it was for nonprofits. But eventually I started working with a series of billionaires and on their nonprofits, because even if you're a billionaire, you cannot solve climate change. You cannot change the whole educational system, things like that. And so to see that in terms of the power of philanthropy, but even with that amount of money, that it was limited. And that's why I got very interested in aligning it in terms of all the other money that those charitable dollars come from. And I worked with some amazing female philanthropists, and I saw they were not tapping. And that is a driving force of why I created World Capital, because I thought those are really savvy women. What if they could engage with all of that money and influence? And I thought that's a huge source of power.
Wow. And what did you learn about these women? I mean, what was keeping them disengaged?
That's a great question. A lot of it was family, that there was the assumption that women from families of wealth would go into philanthropy, that was acceptable. And it is really powerful. It is very satisfying, but there really wasn't a question. Like, the men do this and they look at all the investments, and you can focus on the philanthropy and talk about a light bulb moment. I'm like, philanthropy is this small and much larger universe. So the men were dealing with the much larger amount of dollars, even though these women were giving $1 million gifts and above. That, yeah, just the potential of it was pretty incredible. But in terms of so the family was holding them back, assumptions, and just the concept that I think financial capital is a bit dirty. It's not as virtuous. It's tainted. It's, I think, from having seen traditional male investors use it and invest in ways that they weren't excited by, weren't motivated by, and they were put off by, and it was intimidating. I think those are some of the reasons.
Yeah, it feels like in many ways, some of those things sadly still hold true, as far as
Yes.
breaking family social stigma, feeling welcome to the table, and feeling like anyone can ask a question. And the whole point of learning is to ask the question. And so no one's born with this information, right? It is not something that we are, all of us are not necessarily raised with. So in terms of, tracking to your life in fundraising and then moving, sort of through some inflection points, at what point did you start to say, okay, I now have enough resources to start to make powerful movements or investments with my money that were meaningful to you? When did that happen, and what was it like?
So first of all, I really believe in being forthright and honest. I did not get to the point of making large investments by fundraising. I married into wealth. So a lot of people, I want people to know, in terms of how people arrive at their wealth. I think a lot of people are embarrassed. They feel awkward, but it can be misleading. My fundraising career did not get me to the point where I am now as an investor. So in terms of making some of our first investments, that my husband is a retired tech guy. He had been investing on his own. That's an ethos of his, as well as his extended family. And he got burnt out. He was watching it all the time. .com blow up 2008 when I was not involved. I was pregnant, pretty much checked out and not focused on the market. And that after that, he was burnt out. I was getting more and more interested. And so I took the lead on our investment. And yeah. And so I was very diligent, but I went out and I have books like Highly Concentrated Positions. And I went out to try to talk with people. And I felt like, okay, fundamental analysis, learning all of those things. But when I was looking for information, I found two things. I found I'm very fortunate not be in the position that I have issues and interests that are covered in a lot of basic investing. I no longer needed to pay off my loans. I did not need to save for a car. I did not need to save for a home. So that is a different set of possibilities I'm most focused on and concerns that I wasn't finding information that was tailored to me. And the sources of information that I was finding were mostly financial advisors. And I wanted to find an objective source of information, and I wasn't finding it. And so I created it because I wasn't finding it. I wanted to learn together, to your point about your podcast. That's very powerful. I wanted to learn with women. I wanted to learn with other women who have wealth, who are also progressive. And I wanted an objective, no pitch place to do so. So I started investing in public markets and sort of rejiggered our portfolio, which was very heavily concentrated. And it was scary and exciting, but a bit lonely.
And in terms of making these early decisions, and also having, a welcomed financial responsibility, I feel like sometimes people will say, well, when I have the money, then I'll do this. Or, when the money comes, and then I'll do this other thing. But now here you are in a position of having the financial responsibility in a major way, seeking it, wanting it, and making huge changes in terms of alignment. How confident were you in some of these early things you started to do? And how did your thesis change over time?
Oh, yes. I know no one can see it, but yeah, I'm turning red. So back to that, I probably didn't know enough to know sort of how nervous I should be. But first of all, I had confidence and support and encouragement by my husband, as well as his family, and a belief that there is not so much secret knowledge that a number of advisors I found best to have. I had confidence that I could learn this, but also I had the ability to take more risk. Even though we live off of our assets, we have more than enough definitely from what I grew up with, and in terms of basic security needs, that when you have more, you are able to take more risks. Having said that, I've had a number of breakthrough moments where I was not feeling so confident. So I think, there's all the factual information you gather about investments, and then there's strong feelings elicited by the ups and downs of the market. So one day, our highly concentrated position in tech stock blew up in not a good way. This was towards the beginning of when I was looking at this, and again, depending on it, and I freaked out. And I took our jar of coin down to Coinstar. I dipped by 20%. It went down, and it was very embarrassing, but it's a good reminder to this day in terms of gauging your risk. I jammed up that machine, and then I was quite perturbed when they wouldn't give me the free Amazon card that you don't have to take out a cut of what you put in Coinstar because there was some problem with their machinery. And I actually took a picture of myself. I'm like, this is something I need. So obviously I had gone way beyond my risk tolerance and something needed to change. But it also reminded me, I still had enough, but just how much things can change in terms of feelings of security when the market goes up and down. So that was a real learning lesson.
Yeah, I think that's
and not pretty.
Yeah, it's important. I think risk tolerance is something that we don't talk a lot about. And I think that there is nothing more powerful than seeing a big swing like that and having that happen so early. Actually, in your investing journey, it was probably a huge blessing because now you had an opportunity to really know what the feelings could feel like and investigate those feelings and then make different decisions and feel and think about them differently. I think that is so incredible. You got to feel that early. I sometimes feel like, you sort of pay for an education sometimes, and
Right.
having that inter emotional experience around volatility of the stock market, I think is something that, most people should not be looking at accounts every single day because of how volatile these things can be. And so beyond sort of reimagining your portfolios and spending more time with them, how did you then start to look at the allocation of your assets in a much bigger pie? So looking at sort of how you considered, philanthropy and giving now that you are on the other side of this,
Yes.
what was that like for you now to say, hey there, young 24-year-old who's nurturing this relationship with me? I know exactly what you're going through. And here's how you could probably, I'm sure you've helped a lot of people who have fundraised from you and asked from you. But what was it like to know beyond the other side of that?
So in terms of how I allocate my money, first of all, it's our money. And I have to, even though like I said, take the lead on a number of issues, we are co-investors, as one of my members described her and her husband. But the first thing is we have different takes on it. I'm much more interested in philanthropy, charitable giving than my husband is. He would rather give to people direct giving, which I think is extremely valuable and often devalued. So we have different takes on that. So in terms of allocating, I look at it back to risk in different pots. We have a donor advised fund, which that money is gone. It's ours to advise on in terms of where it goes to, which nonprofits. But that is the lowest risk, highest impact, lowest risk. Then also in terms of retirement, that is something, fortunately, we won't have to tap into for a long time. And so that's where, for example, I invest in venture through my retirement accounts because that's tied up for 10 years. Again, we live off of our assets. That is something I can wait on. And so again, that's higher risk. And so in a longer time span. So I do that within retirement. And then taxable, we really do think in terms of, what we need to live off of, how much we sell every year, what to sell. And those are mostly in public stocks.
Got it.
And we do individual stocks, which all of this is not a recommendation for other people, but that's what we feel comfortable with.
So fun. So as you were starting to think about, I guess, venture investments or angel investing, and I'm sure you see your fair share of pitch decks, both from the fundraising side for philanthropy, but also on the venture side for startups. How do you now sort of approach all the inbound and what's coming in, what gets filtered? What's a gentle no from Barbara Pierce? How is it that you start to navigate all of this momentum and inbound?
Well, first of all, people have a lot of assumptions. I mean, I've created a group called Win-Win Capital. So fair game in terms of them not realizing it's a no pitch zone. And so that our members don't pitch to each other. I don't pitch to them and I don't bring in people to pitch to them. So in terms of people approaching me, sometimes it's not clear, in terms of their interest in pitching to me versus oftentimes it's my group because there's a tremendous amount of capital within that group. And I'm teaching people to invest in funds like venture funds and angel funds. But the pitch part of it, the no pitch part is really important to me because there are so many different factors involved in that. And it's a very inefficient system. So in terms of just someone who gets through to me in terms of inbound or people that I like or, things like that, I really don't want to ever make recommendations. I'll make introductions, but the inbound, frankly, is a bit overwhelming. Most people are respectful when I say I'm full up for this year in terms of alternatives and I don't pitch to my members. But yes, I think it's a very inefficient system. I've met some amazing people. I've had them as my speakers and my members have invested in them because they're vetted. They have a big vision, great results, and people invest in people. So,
yeah, that's great. I mean, I think that, it's it's always interesting to hear how people are navigating, as things change financially, and also your visibility, and how people get to know you now, your presence and the communities that you've been a part of. One of the things that I think is so fascinating, and now I realize this comes from your college days, but the power of the people today. I mean, as I look at the organizations and the groups that you've been a part of and the places in which you've chosen to spend your time and energy, I'd love to hear from you. What were some of the things that led really to you becoming a founder and principal of Women with Capital? What were the things that you were noticing, and how did you say, okay, this is going to be the thing that I now decide to dedicate my time and energy to? And I imagine, you've probably met some incredible women along the way before you launched Women with Capital nearly 6 years ago. So what were some of the groups like, and how did you decide to form this new company?
So I've been part of incredible communities, philanthropic communities that I'm really proud to be a part of, and have met incredible women. But I went through angel investing training, go to conferences. And so when I started Women with Capital, first of all, I was isolated. I wanted to do something together, and I wanted to learn with other women, and that I took what I liked from all these different groups, and that I was also very aware in terms of what's missing. And so I created it for me, and I wanted to attract other progressive, interesting, and interested women who were open to stepping into their finances in new ways. So that I did meet incredible women. I am very comfortable in talking about money, which I think is a big factor in how I've attracted and connected with other women who are willing, interested, and open to exploring this world of investing in capital, and really reflecting on how wealth affects them, how it plays out in their families, and all the opportunities to make a difference.
I love that. I'd love to go a little bit deeper into how wealth affects family. As you are at home and talking as a family, is money a topic of conversation? How have financial resources, or let's say values around money, been something that you've been able to teach as a mother, and be able to impart this knowledge, right? What does Mama Barbara have to say about money at home?
That's a great question, and it is a work in progress. So first of all, my husband and I talk about money openly. We both love investing, and that's the lens that we talk about it through. And because I think it's also a lens on the world, and as well as our ongoing security and opportunities and choices in terms of what we're able to do. So my son has been aware of that from a young age, and he is now just turned 16. And so I bring up, first of all, I talk a lot about what I do, and I think he's proud of me. And although sometimes, he's like, oh, these ladies, always the ladies, because I live in a women's circle. So that we started out, and like I said, it's more my interest in talking with him every year about giving, what that process looks like, what does he want to support. And back in 2020, he's like, well, I want to support the ACLU because we're going to need prescient, and also the food bank because of the pandemic. And so I've been tracking. I have a framework, this philanthropy framework that I put together for my members, and that I use. It tracks with the sustainable development goals that I put down every year where he gives, so that someday he can look back and be like, oh, I've been making a difference for a long time. So we talk about that. But then most recently, didn't give him, we allowed him access, invest a certain amount of money. So it is his in theory to invest, but it's not his to have, so that he can learn to take risks. He could lose it all. He could make a ton of money. But we want him to feel comfortable engaging in that. And it's been great for conversations in the house. Some like gamemanship. I'm up this, I'm up that. People are bad. People lost money, yeah. So, I know all the things in the world because I invested in NVIDIA, things like that. So it's a great laboratory in terms of, because he will have money and he'll be making himself as well as inheriting. And so we want him to get comfortable. My mother-in-law, I just visited with, she's 92. We always go over our lists in terms of which stocks she holds, which stocks I hold, what, we're thinking of doing. And that's a great conversation that we all get to participate in. I think that's unusual, but I also think it's pretty healthy.
That's fabulous. I love that. That's like, I think that more families should be talking about the list. What are the things you're excited about and why?
Yeah.
And why are you making these decisions?
Yes, the why.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, what information do you know that I don't know? Or, like, how can we really talk and support each other in elevating everyone's position with how they're looking at investing? I think that is really remarkable to be able to have that level of dialogue and intimacy and comfortability around money to do that at home, Barbara. That's really wonderful. So as you are looking at really, women with capital and developing and growing this particular platform, I think what's so interesting for me is it really feels very legacy driven. And I don't know if you feel it or see it that way, but the environment that you're creating feels like something that will live on and have this beautiful butterfly ripple effect into the world for generations and in ways that, people may not fully recognize in this moment. But I think it's really beautiful to think about legacy in terms of what you're building with women with capital. But before I ask you about the double click on legacy, I'd love to hear what you're the most proud of with women with capital.
Well, it's very timely that I just calculated this morning with the help of my assistant, is my mission has been to educate, inspire, and support progressive women moving multi-millions, even billions of dollars. And so I did a impact tally and asked them, since joining Women with Capital, what new impact investments have you made? And what type of new approaches or dollars have you moved into philanthropy? And I am thrilled over this time period that it's close to $150 million for 50 women.
Oh my gosh, that is just so incredible. Bravo.
Right. And that's on top of what they already do. So that's just since entering into this, learning together and seeing all the possibilities and taking action. And so I am incredibly proud to be among these women and to see them do incredible things in a relatively short amount of time. So 150 million in 5 years and among 50 women. That is incredible. And they're going to do a lot more. It's just the start. I have members that are 30 and I have members that are 70. And so they're at different points, but they all have more than enough. And one of the women in their 30s said, I want to have a downward trend. I want to, and this was influenced by you, die with zero. That's revolutionary. You introduced me to that book. So, in terms of legacy, it's a very different view of it. And it's incredible to it.
Oh, that's incredible. I love that so much. And as you look back, I mean, it's very evident to me sort of the body of work that you've been creating. But as you look back at a young age of 110 and sort of reflect on this next journey and chapter of your life as you are building and creating and ultimately what I think is so powerful is enabling others. There are parts of our lives where we are in support of other people's missions, and then there's finding ourselves and at self-advocacy, and then there's enabling other people. What does legacy look and feel like to you if you were to reflect back at the nice young age of 110, Barbara?
I think I have an unusual level of comfort, as you do, in terms of talking about money and making people feel comfortable and not judged, regardless of what their quote unquote number is. And so what I'd like my legacy to be is to see women embracing what they have, feeling comfortable with having the power that goes along with having money and using it differently. I think that's why a lot of women abdicate getting involved with their finances, because they've seen how that's operated in the world so far. And so I would like my legacy for women to stand up, embrace it, encourage each other, and be models of how we can do this different.
Sign me up. I'm here for it. Let's crush it, Barbara. This is what we're here for. So my final two questions are really some of my favorite. The first one is, money is so much fun to do fabulous things with. And there are lots of things that bring us joy with our money. Certainly making values aligned investments and putting our money towards things that are meaningful are wonderful ways of allocating our resources. And so is holiday or vacation or other things that really give us access or give us these experiences or things, right? What are some of your favorite things that you like to spend your money on?
I was asked by a friend, if you won the lottery, which I'd play, because you can't win, don't play. And after I allocated most of that to a foundation, more, what would I do with the rest? And said, you cannot include real estate. I was like, oh, I'm on there looking for tiny houses. We're lucky to have more than one residence. But yeah, that's really appealing to me. But the thing that we're spending the most money on is, again, with this Die with Zero, is front loading experiences with our team. Who's still at home with us, and that we have health and ability to travel, that we have the time to experience the world with him. And so we are going on one of the trips of a lifetime and going all out to Africa. That I have dreamed of going there from a very young age, watching, Wild Wild Kingdom. And we're going to see the wildebeest. And we're going to the Serengeti. We're going to Cape Town. We're going to Kruger. And he's really excited about that. And I was very proud, since we've been traveling a lot. He said on our last trip, he said, oh yeah, I'd rather be back in Mill Valley, which is our affluent suburb, getting all sorts of gifts versus like doing international travel. I'm like, okay, we hit it. He's not that interested in material things. So,
wow, that's so fabulous. Travel at such a young age is to me, it was one of the most powerful things that I ever got to do when I was younger, is be able to see the world, realize that happiness, joy, and the world is so big yet so small. And, there's so much life to extract from it when you feel comfortable and in your skin and in yourself being able to be in and of the world. It's a beautiful gift to share with a young person. So Barbara, obviously you are crushing it in all things. I'm so grateful to know you. I have so much admiration and respect for the work that you've been doing for so long now. And certainly we can't do this alone. We need each other. We need our communities. We need to rally people, the thing that they feel aligned with, to make movement and change around. With that, what is it that we, the audience, can do to support you? What are you calling in? What do you need? What can we do?
Thank you. Thanks so much for asking, because the together part is key. And so with this, said I'm really proud of what this relatively small group of women have been able to accomplish. And what is driving me is to reach more women, because I believe that a lot of women with wealth are isolated. They're ashamed of it. They're hiding it. They're uncomfortable with it. And so I'm looking to do more interviews like this, more speaking, to reach the women that I am not reaching right now. I think it's 50 women can move this much money. Just imagine even 100, 1,000. And so that's one thing that I really want to do. And in terms of that together theme, I want to partner with philanthropic organizations that aren't focused on impact investing right now and want to help their members align their money. This model that I've come up with works. And so I would love to partner with groups like that or financial institutions that really want to build a partnership with their clients that are coming into all this money, have already come into it and come into more, and to really engage them and that recognize the value of community of peers. Those are the things that I'm hoping to do out in the world with others. And the last thing is that I have been collecting, and I'm going to share what works, what these women are doing, what other women could do. I want to get women who are on the precipice of getting involved with their investments, that they have significant wealth, but are not engaging with it. I want to do some focus groups with those women. So one of your listeners, many of your listeners fall into that category. They'll reach out to you.
Well, yes, I'm sure they will. Barbara, thank you for your spirit of generosity, your time and energy today, what you're building, and really what you've been building throughout your life, I think is really clear. You know, being able to move money with values, with alignment, with purpose, being able to leverage the power of people and to be able to really build community, I think is such an incredible superpower of yours. Thank you so much for being with me here today on Getting Rich Together.
Well, thank you for all you're doing. I'm glad that we're on the same mission.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Getting Rich Together. Please take a minute to subscribe. And if you like this episode, I'd love it if you could share it with a friend who is ready to elevate their financial future. Until next time, let's keep getting rich together.